So you were a psychotherapist at the Tavistock Clinic, infamous for the transgender ideology, but other things as well. Did you see that Tavistock Clinic becoming ideologically captured?
So my background is in nursing. I was a mental health nurse, and I did 2 years of training at the Tavistock, and I graduated with a postgraduate diploma. And when I was there for the first 2 years, it was kind of okay. I was aware of the gender identity clinic, but it was kind of separate from my training, and it seemed almost like diametrically opposed to what I was doing, because we were all about talking, whereas the gender identity was all about like changing the body in medicine. So I sort of thought, well, that's a kind of weird kind of separate thing from what I'm doing. So I was kind of happy. And then So I did my first 2 years, and then when I returned for the second 2 years, very quickly, that's when I saw that the whole thing had been captured and ideology had taken over, essentially. So straight away, it was kind of ideology from the get-go. And I was quite surprised how quickly that had happened.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you want me to go into it? Because it's a big, long kind of story that I have about what happened.
Yeah, do. I mean, so was it like you came back after the initial 2 years, it seemed a bit more normal, and it was almost like one of these movies where everybody had been replaced with like grey masks of I don't know, what are they called, apparatchiks? Is that the right word, apparatchik?
Yeah, it was kind of like that. So how it started was that there was a lecture. I started in September in the academic year, and there was a lecture on race and racism. And I was kind of like, that's quite soon to have a lecture about that sort of thing. And I'm aware that this is around this kind of just after Black Lives Matter movement and you know, George Floyd and everything. So I was aware that it was a highly political subject, but I was kind of like open to it, because I was like, well, there is kind of lots of psychology around race and racism, and you know, I'm kind of interested in that, so you know, whatever. And then when I went to the lecture, it was just all politics. There was no kind of psychology. It was all kind of about the Black Lives Matter movement, and it was really one-sided, and they weren't even like bringing in evidence of any kind. So, and then one of the lecturers, she kept sort of linking racism to Christianity, and I'm a Christian. So, like when it got to the end of the lecture, I just politely asked, because I was thinking this lecture is so imbalanced and it's so political, and why am I paying to kind of be taught politics when I'm here to do psychotherapy? I sort of said, I noticed that you've, you know, related racism to Christianity on several occasions. I'm curious as to why you've sort of singled out that one religion. You know, and I sort of thought that was quite a sort of, you know, an okay question. I didn't accuse her. I was just curious. I was expressing curiosity. And she doubled down. She said, well, Christianity is responsible for racism because it's European. And I was just like, what the hell's going on? She did, and I said to her, you know, I'm a Christian, and she didn't apologize. She didn't seem kind of open to debate. And what I noticed, because this was on a Zoom call when it was during COVID, so we were doing everything online. And I noticed that all the sort of people on the Zoom call were sort of like in agreement with her, and they were like outraged that I'd even asked a question. How could you see that? Was it like on the looks? It was like all the looks sort of totally changed. Like, what is this? And
furrowed brows.
Yeah. And even the sort of the other supervisors and the course lead who was on the Zoom call, it was suddenly like, what am I doing? Why is she asking this? And I was like, well, hang on a minute, we've just sat through like a kind of piece of propaganda for like over half an hour. It was all stuff about how the media was racist to Meghan Markle, how this so-and-so person was racist. And I was like, what has this got to do with psychology and psychotherapy? There's no evidence here. So that happened, and I suddenly felt like, okay, what's going on here? Because, you know, the way they reacted wasn't normal, because I sort of thought, I had to sort of doubt, I sort of thought, hang on, what did I just say? Was it okay? And I thought, no, it was okay. It was just a question. So that happened. And then not long after that, there was a lecture that was sent round to all the students. It was celebrating the sort of 100th anniversary of the Tavistock. And it was called Whiteness, a Problem for Our Time.
Oh, don't. A problem for our time.
Yeah.
It sounds like, that does sound quite Mein Kampf-y.
It's like, I was like, okay, this sounds kind of racist, right? I was thinking if it was any other race, if it was like Jewishness, a problem for our time, I was like, whoa, what is this? I was like, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, because, you know, I watched it, and it was an hour of critical race theory. Totally, it was unbelievable. There was no kind of other side to the debate. So that the lecturer, Helen Morgan, was saying things like, you know, white people are responsible for all the problems in the world.
She said that?
Yeah, she was saying white people. Yeah, she was saying white privilege like it was a fact. She was saying things like, all white people are racist, essentially. Even white children are racist. And we need to be aware of children's race.
Children's racism.
And it wasn't what I was concerned with. I'm quite an open-minded person, right? So if somebody has a different politics to me, I've worked with lots of patients that disagree with me on all sorts of things. I'm open to that. But I guess what really worried me is that it wasn't saying there is this thing called critical race theory. It's a theory. This is what it says. And you can agree with it on this line or you can disagree with it. And here's people's opposition to it. It was presenting it as a fact. And actually, it became more and more hysterical as it went on. So towards the end of the lecture, when there was Q&As, people were becoming tearful about the fact that they'd taken the colourblind approach and how awful that was to, that they needed to be aware that there are differences. And I was like, I sort of had this moment where I thought, oh my God, that the lunatics are in charge of the asylum. Yeah. I just thought, if you get one bad egg, you sort of think, okay, I get it. This person's a bit dodgy. But it was like everyone on this Zoom call, nobody was questioning it. Nobody was sort of saying, oh, are there any downsides to this theory? Or, is there any, what's your evidence for that? It was just, ideology, dogma all the way through. And as I said, it was extremely racist.